campaign almost exactly a year ago, with a pandemic disrupting the lives and livelihoods of virtually everyone on our planet. We came together appreciating that foreign ministries and multilateral institutions have a critical role to play in coordinating and prioritizing this challenge across borders and across bureaucracies. Because we know that a pandemic is not just a health crisis, it's a security crisis, it's an economic crisis, it's a humanitarian crisis. Health security is national security. We launched the Global Action Plan as an intensive 12-month effort, mobilizing over 33 countries, as well as the European Union, the African Union, the World Health Organization, to help lead the world out of the acute phase of COVID-19. And thanks to the work of so many of you, along with NGOs, the private sector, our health and frontline workers, we've made significant headway. We know the pandemic is not over, but we have reached what the WHO considers a transition point. While COVID will be with us for the foreseeable future, we have dramatically reduced global deaths and severe illness. We've managed the effects of COVID through increasingly available vaccines and treatments. And we're figuring out how to apply lessons from this pandemic to enhance health security going forward. Across all 6 lines of effort that we laid out a year ago, our progress has been impressive and in some cases remarkable. First and foremost, this group has helped get shots into arms, with nearly 64% of people around the world having completed their first 2 doses. Greater coordination through GAP has also strengthened supply chains and improved distribution to some of the most remote corners of the world, whether shipping supplies like syringes where they're desperately needed, or inventing new cold chain storage solutions as Japan so innovatively did. We combated misinformation and disinformation, hosting local information sessions to address misperceptions and help skeptical communities appreciate that vaccines are safe and beneficial. GAP has also taken steps to support health workers on the front lines, from providing personal protective equipment to getting those workers vaccinated. Today, nearly 90% of health workers around the world are fully vaccinated, and greater protection for our health workers means that they're able to better care for others. We're also strengthening testing and treatment to ensure that those at the highest risk can get tested as soon as they develop symptoms and rapidly receive medication and care if needed. That includes partnering with the private sector in places like South Africa to make medical oxygen more affordable. Finally, we're working to strengthen global health security. That means improving our collective early warning systems for detecting diseases, speeding up production, and distribution of vaccines, PPE, and tests. It means negotiating a pandemic accord with other WHO members, as well as boosting financing for preparedness, like with the new pandemic fund that the World Bank and the WHO are putting together. The United States has already pledged $450 million to that fund, and we'll be looking to other nations, including many of you, for your contributions and your leadership. Taken together, we're building a world better prepared to prevent, detect, and respond to the next pandemic, and to do so quickly, effectively, and equitably, because an equitable approach is both the right thing to do and the smart thing to do. Despite all of this progress, we know that real challenges remain. Too many older and immunocompromised people are not getting vaccines or antiviral treatments.
Recording in progress.
And new variants and unanticipated obstacles could, of course, set us back. The world cannot succumb to the cycle of panic and neglect that we saw with Ebola in 2014 and Zika in 2016. We like to say that this time is different. Now we actually have to prove it. In the long term, we need to institutionalize the role that foreign ministries played in the COVID response and apply it to our continued efforts to strengthen health security. The pandemic underscored that we have to confront these shared challenges together. GAP showed that we are capable of doing that. Now I think it's on us to try to maintain the momentum, to safeguard the health of our people, to save lives. As we open today's discussion, I simply want to say this. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for your engagement, and especially the countries that have served as ministerial co-hosts, Japan, Bangladesh, Botswana, and Spain. And now I look forward to hearing from everyone else. Thanks so much. Mary Beth, back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. If I may next call on Foreign Minister Hayashi from Japan. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And first of all, Secretary Blinken, thank you very much for hosting this great event. And distinguished participants. A year ago in February, when the Omicron variant was raging around the world, we came together to launch the Global Action Plan, GAP. And since the launch of the GAP under the leadership of the United States, various countries and international organizations have cooperated in efforts to contain COVID-19. Japan has not only addressed vaccine supply, but has also developed vaccination capacities, taking the lead to get shots in arms as part of the Global Action Plan. And during the past year, we have seen remarkable progress in the situation surrounding vaccination. So, however, it is also true that we are still facing challenges in ensuring equitable access to vaccines throughout the world, and our efforts should continue, as Tony said. So in addition to our current efforts against COVID-19, we must also fully prepare for actions to be taken after the acute phase of the pandemic. Japan has also made a strong contribution to strengthening global health security architecture. As part of this commitment, Japan has announced a contribution of $50 million to the newly established pandemic fund. Further, it is increasingly important to facilitate the economic and social revitalization and the resumption of cross-border travel for developing countries. For this, Japan has been providing up to $100 million, primarily in the Indo-Pacific region. Through this assistance, we support development of a digital information management system for vaccination and the strengthening of border control management capacity, including infectious disease control measures. In May, Japan will host the G7 Hiroshima Summit with global health as one of its priority issues. And at Japan's presidency, the G7 Summit will advance discussions based on the following 3 pillars: developing and strengthening global health architecture for public health emergencies, and contributing to achieving more resilient, equitable, and sustainable universal health coverage, and promoting health innovation to address various health challenges. Japan is determined to continue to play a leading role in global health, not only for the containment of COVID-19, but also for the establishment of better health security and the achievement of UHC, universal health coverage, toward the post-COVID-19 era. In other words, the realization of a society that leaves no one behind. We will continue to cooperate closely with countries, including the US, which has led the GAP, as well as with GAP participants, G20 members, the WHO, and as a relevant organization and partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency. For my next call on Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, Dr. Momin. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellencies. I thank the Secretary Blinken for Foreign Ministerial Virtual Global Action Plan meeting, as COVID is no longer a deadly threat. I commend Secretary Blinken and the US government for taking this initiative at a time when it was urgently needed. I also thank the partners of this platform. I also express my deepest condolences for those that perished due to devastating quakes. Distinguished participants, most significant learning of this pandemic was that although health security is national security, it has global implications, and no one is safe until everyone is safe. Therefore, warrants concerted global efforts and partnership. I am really happy to see that the multilateral processes, including initiatives like Act A or COVAX under the umbrella of WHO, played phenomenal role in combating this pandemic. However, we should not be complacent. Rather, taking lessons from this pandemic, we need to create a global health strategy to respond to such future threats immediately, decisively, and in a coordinated manner. We need to expand significantly the capacity of our healthcare sector, and for that, we would require a sustained and significant injection of funds for such capacity building, particularly in the lower income countries. Excellencies, vaccines remain the main tool to fight the pandemic, and it will remain so in future. Unfortunately, it did not reach all countries equitably and on time, which prolonged the pandemic and increased loss of lives. I read that vaccines should be declared a global public goods and distributed without discrimination. I also urge to the developed countries to allow countries like Bangladesh that has relatively advanced pharmaceutical manufacturing base to manufacture vaccines through appropriate provisions in intellectual property rights and technology transfer. Excellencies, in Bangladesh, under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we have made tremendous success in COVID management. We focused on saving lives while supporting livelihood, especially of the most vulnerable ones, and in posting quick recovery, economic recovery. We formed coordination committees across all administrative tiers in the government. We rapidly scaled up cold chain system, beefed up oxygen supply, rapidly increased hospital beds, and conducted community-wide confidence-building campaigns, among many other measures. Strong political will, targeted approach, and digitization of the vaccine process contributed to our success. Achieving WHO target of vaccinating 70% of the population ahead of the deadline, we are on course to reach 90%. We thank USA for being the largest donor of vaccines to my country under conflict. We introduced 28 financial and incentive packages worth of $23 billion and ensured their effective and inclusive implementation. As a result, our economic growth sustained, and we achieved 6.9% GDP growth rate, even under COVID-19. Now COVID is out, the way our public health system responded towards mass vaccination and hospital care resulting in low death can be a lesson to many, and we are open to share our experience. As the work on prevention, preparedness, and response would be in focus in the coming days to combat any such future threat, we need to continue to cooperate bilaterally, regionally, and globally. We need to keep platforms like GAP functioning in some way or the other, and we are always ready to contribute. I appreciate the idea of organizing COVID-19 Pandemic Summit to remember that the world had to witness and handle a big global crisis all on a sudden. And we, the international community, together to address such an emergency health situation to ensure greater global good. I thank you all. Jai Bangla.
Thank you, sir. German Federal Foreign Minister Baerbock, over to you, ma'am.
Dear Tony, colleagues and friends, no one is safe until everyone is safe. When we launched the Global Action Plan last year, we all committed to turning this pledge into action. Since then, we have advanced multilateral efforts to push back the virus. Together, we delivered nearly 1 billion doses of safe and effective vaccines. We provided frontline health workers, mostly women, with safety glasses, gowns, gloves, and test kits, things that they urgently needed to protect themselves while helping others. And most importantly, we worked hard to turn vaccines into vaccinations, getting more shots actually into people's arms. With our last mile initiative, we provided motorbikes to transport doctors to remote villages, and solar-powered fridges to bring vaccines to children, women, and men living in places with high temperatures in more than 100 countries. Our work actually made a difference. It saved lives. And that is why I would like to thank you, Tony, for bringing us together. I also wanted to thank you, Japan, Yogi, which now has the G7 presidency, for continuing the work on global health that guided Germany's G7's presidency last year. And I praise Indonesia and India as former and current G20 presidencies for keeping the pandemic and global health on the international agenda. With our friends and partners, we are sending a clear message. We are standing up for the most vulnerable, for cooperation and solidarity, and it is enshrined in the UN Charter, even while Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine is raging on European soil. That is key because, as many have already said, much remains to be done. The plain truth is, as the international community, we have not managed to distribute vaccines fairly to all people on the planet. In many places, vaccination rates remain low, especially where people are already suffering from poverty and wars, and where the climate crisis is hitting entire regions, with even stronger droughts and storms. The failure does not only threaten lives of millions of children, women, and men, it also is a risk to our global and national security. Because we have seen how the pandemic has killed people, pushed millions into poverty, especially for girls and women, also to domestic violence, took children out of school, and contributed to conflict within and between states. We cannot undo these mistakes that were made in the past, but we can learn from them together. And that is why we as foreign ministers will remain engaged for global health together with the World Health Organization. And that is why Germany stands ready to negotiate a pandemic agreement that, drawing from the lessons from COVID-19, will prepare us for future health crises. By investing in the training of our health workers, by strengthening the resilience of health systems, by advancing joint surveillance against new viruses, and thereby increasing transparency, and fourth, by producing more and better vaccines everywhere. Because, friends, no one is safe until everyone is safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. If I may now call on the World Health Organization Director General, Dr. Tedros. Over to you, sir.
Secretary Blinken, honorable ministers, thank you, Secretary Blinken, to you and the co-hosts for your leadership and for bringing us together today. When we last met in September, reported COVID-19 deaths were near their lowest since the pandemic began. But for the past 10 weeks, reported deaths have been rising. As we enter the fourth year of the pandemic, we're in a far better situation than we were a year ago. But the global recovery remains hobbled because powerful life-saving tools are still not getting to all the people who need them most, especially older people and health workers. At the same time, surveillance has declined dramatically, complicating the detection of new variants. We can do more to secure victory over COVID-19 and achieve the goals of the Global Action Plan. That means vaccinating and boosting 100% of the most at-risk groups. It means increasing access to testing and early antiviral use. It means taking context-specific measures when there is a surge in cases. And it means fighting misinformation. The world should now be able to transition to a new phase with COVID-19 deaths reduced to the lowest possible level and health systems able to manage these diseases in a sustainable way. The ACT Accelerator, as you have already said earlier, has taught us a lot of lessons as it delivered nearly 2 billion doses of vaccines, 160 million tests, 40 million treatments, and 2 billion items of PPE with the generous support of many donors, including those in this forum. Accordingly, WHO is convening an inclusive process to design a multi-disease, multi-tool, end-to-end platform to coordinate the rapid development of and equitable access to medical countermeasures for future pandemics and major epidemics. And Secretary Blinken, as a foreign minister myself, former foreign minister myself, I support the idea you suggested of the role of foreign ministers in future epidemics and pandemics, not only as a DG. Your support and engagement in this process will be crucial as we strengthen the global health security architecture with a stronger WHO at its center. Secretary Blinken, thank you once again for your leadership in convening the Global Action Plan, which has played a vital role in supporting the global response. By the way, I feel bad that this will be the last meeting because I feel nostalgic as a former foreign minister when I join you. But I thank you all for all the support you have provided, and I hope you will continue to invest in health. You have an important role to play, as Secretary Blinken had already said, and this should continue. Thank you so much, and back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Director General Tedros. We will now turn to interventions from our other GAP partners. If I may now turn to the Republic of Korea, Minister Park, please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Park Jin, Korean Foreign Minister. It's good to see you again, Tony, and honorable foreign ministers, and Dr. Tedros, Director General of the WHO. Let me first thank the U.S. for its leadership in bringing us together to collectively respond to one of the worst pandemics in history. The COVID-19 Global Action Plan has been instrumental in generating the much-needed political momentum to mobilize partners and strengthen coalition coordination. The GAP also demonstrated how flexible ad hoc mechanisms can effectively complement the work of international organizations during times of crisis. And thanks to these efforts, we can now say with cautious optimism that the worst of COVID-19 is finally behind us. However, we must continue to work together if we are to prevent the future pandemics with far more devastating consequences. So going forward, based on the painful lessons, we should focus on the following priorities. First, we must continue to ensure equitable global access to COVID-19 tools. Korea remains committed to providing the necessary support through our commitment of $300 million to the ACT Accelerator. Second, we must continue to invest in local and national health systems to address the significant gaps revealed during the COVID-19. We hope the pandemic fund, to which Korea committed $30 million, will play a key role in assisting partner countries build the necessary capabilities. Korea will also help countries manufacture critical medical countermeasures through the WHO Global Biomanufacturing Training Hub that was set up in Korea last year. And finally, we must ensure that the global health system facilitates collective and coordinated action to limit pandemic risks and respond effectively. The ACT Accelerator, the first global initiative of its kind, was critical to this end. we should work together so that future initiatives are even more coordinated, more inclusive, and more accountable. And rest assured that Korea will continue to play its part. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker will be the Vice President and High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy of the European Union. Over to you, High Representative Burrell.
Hi, hi, thank you. Thank you to all of you, and in particular to you, dear Tony, for gathering us today. Everybody agrees that the pandemic has taught us that we need to approach health at the global level, and that's why we have been fully mobilized to contribute to the successful implementation of the Global Action Plan to beat the pandemic. We must now reflect on where more work is needed, like how to vaccinate populations in fragile humanitarian settings, or how to ensure access to testing and to the treatments for the most exposed and vulnerable. And for this, we need a clear roadmap about how to do. And that's why last November, we presented our European Union Global Health Strategy, which builds on the lessons learned from the pandemic and presents actions that should help tackling health inequalities worldwide and combating health threats. Let me just briefly emphasize some key principles and lines of actions of this strategy. First, we need a robust global health governance. This includes a more accountable and sustainable financed WHO at the core of the multilateral system. It also means more cooperation through G7, G20, and with other global, regional, and bilateral partners. This is essential to avoid the duplication and fragmentation of efforts in our today very much complex geopolitical environment.